Welcome back. Some of the stories we cover here at the Listening Post tend to have a recurring theme, and one of those themes is governments fighting against big opposition media companies. Last month, we looked at Turkey and the Erdogan government's battle with the huge Doğan Yayın conglomerate, and we've reported a few times on Hugo Chávez's ongoing war with the owners of the Venezuelan channel RCTV. But seldom do these spats lead to actual legislation, the likes of which we've now seen in Argentina, where President Christina Kirchner is up against a dominant media player called Grupo Clarin. Kirchner's government has passed a law that would completely transform the Argentinian media landscape and force Grupo Clarin to shed many of its media holdings. Are we looking here at a necessary overhaul of archaic media rules, a model for other countries to follow? Or is this just a government trying to silence its biggest, most powerful critic? The Listening Post's Salah Khadar now on the new law that is both figuratively and literally dividing the media in Argentina.
Across Latin America, the media is changing, and it's coming from the top.
It seems to be part of a regional trend at the moment that's spreading throughout South America, starting with Venezuela, where President Hugo Chávez has already withdrawn the broadcast license of what was the country's largest television network.
This is called in Venezuela terrorismo judicial.
We're hearing similar talk coming out of Ecuador, Nicaragua, and even in Uruguay.
And Argentina is no exception.
Argentina's President Christina Kirchner's push for a new media law has pitted her against one of Latin America's biggest news empires.
A new bill recently passed into law is drastically shaking up the division of power in the sector, most notably taking it away from Grupo Clarin, the country's largest media conglomerate.
I think that there's no question that Mr. and Mrs. Kirchner, the former president and now the current president, are out to get the Clarin Group, whom they now see as the enemy. But this media law isn't just about the Clarin Group. It's about making sure that no media group at all has too much power.
In the context of Clarin opposing Christina Kirchner's government pretty much since March of 2008, one might think she had just decided that it was time to face up to it. I think the need for democratization of the media has been noted by most journalists who aren't involved in the media conglomerates.
But there used to be a time when Grupo Clarin was the teacher's pet, or more accurately, the dictator's mouthpiece.
The former law, which was passed in 1980 by former dictator Rafael Videla, stated that no other group could access media other than private media holders. Grupo Clarin was one of the major beneficiaries from the dictatorship law.
In fact, the group controls 73% of media licenses, including the leading cable channel, Cablevision, and TV channel Canal 13, the country's leading daily newspaper Clarin, as well as other stakes in publishing, internet and digital content. Clarin's unrivaled position in the Argentine media has unnerved both governments and consumers for decades.
The need for this law has been noted pretty much ever since democracy came back in 1983. Different groups have been lobbying for years and years to do this. Essentially, nobody was willing to use their political capital up until now to face down what is essentially the largest newspaper and media group in Argentina.
That was before President Christina Kirchner took office. Notoriously media-phobic, having only given 3 news conferences in her 2.5 years in power, she has had a contentious relationship with Grupo Clarin.
The
demonopolization of the media, which is currently in too few hands, will give small and medium-sized companies a chance.
The paradox here is that the Clarin Group actually supported Nestor Kirchner, the former president, and the current president during their election campaigns. But when Christina Kirchner took over, some criticism began to emerge from Clarin, and the straw that broke the camel's back was the Clarin Group's support of a farmers' strike. This infuriated Nestor Kirchner and his wife Christina Kirchner, and they decided that enough was enough, that it was time to take down the Clarin Group.
And if the law is enacted as proposed, the media landscape will be split 3 ways, between the government and public sector, the non-profit sector, and private ownership.
Grupo Clarin obviously has opposed this bill because leading up to the bill, they had no competition whatsoever.
Este es un proyecto que trata de...
The aim is to break up the Clarin group. The bottom line is power. For the Kirchners, anything that stands in their way must be eliminated.
But as Grupo Clarin prepared to fight the legislation, most people welcome the change.
Most Argentines will tell you that reform of the media law is long overdue and that they support any legislation that will prevent any one media group from having a monopoly.
I think there will be programming that is targeted at a far wider spectrum of society, and I think concerns of a wider amount of people will be addressed. Really what this law does is that it takes the concept of freedom of expression and takes it far beyond merely abstaining from censorship.
But the skeptics say Argentina's new media bill is just as undemocratic as its predecessor. They also question how effective the new law will be at actually improving the quality and transparency of both news journalism and television programming in the country.
Now, only the state-run television network and radio network will be able to be seen throughout Argentina to broadcast news. And so the criticism is that this will allow the president to set and to control the news agenda throughout the country.
Time will tell whether this was an initiative for the government to maintain control over opposition in the press, or if this is a true initiative to foster community media.
Either way, the battle lines have been drawn in what is a domestic media war neither side can afford to lose.
More Global Village Voices now on media versus governments in Latin America.
In the last few years, some left and right-wing governments have sought to limit or control those media outlets which oppose or criticize them. In one occasion, an independent journalist has been called a publicist for terrorism by a very popular president on national television. Continental trend or not, freedom of expression and freedom of the press are increasingly more in danger in most of Latin America.
Media corporations in Argentina and other countries too are defending their businesses using their journalists as weapons. They induce people into believing that freedom of press and expression are being threatened, when in fact the only freedom that is threatened is the one that these corporations have to monopolize the public opinion. There can be no freedom of expression as channels of expression are concentrated in few hands.
Finally, the World Wide Web has served as a springboard for many a new celebrity. Some people seem to think that all you need is a camera and a link to the internet, but it also helps if you have some talent. LEMIEUX is a trampolinist. He's a member of the renowned Canadian circus troupe, Cirque du Soleil. And his routine is so cool it has many online viewers asking if the performance is enhanced through the use of computer graphics. It isn't. We're leaving you now with a web video of the week that just jumped out at us. See you next time at The Listening Post.